I'm working on a very fun and different other video that should have been out this week, but I got derailed by the Ghost of Tsushima sequel announcement that came from the latest PlayStation State of Play. Well, I haven't played the first Ghost yet, and so I wasn't terribly excited to see a sequel. I watched the trailer hoping there would be no spoilers for the first game, and when we got to the character reveal, it appeared to be a woman. I immediately went to the comments to see the predictable arguments that would come from such a reveal. Ghost of Yotei versus You Broke Incels was the spirit of the entire comment section. Very predictable at this point. It was all woke of Tsushima.
Put a chicken in and make her name it gay!
Versus, if you Google Japanese history, female shinobi were not uncommon. When the men went to war, the women stepped up and trained and became just as good. And on it went. Like I mentioned in one of my angrier videos where I accused the entertainment industry of conducting a psyop to sow division, which seems to be a very real consequence of all the changes being made, intentional or unintentional, it becomes very difficult to parse out the disingenuous rage baiters from the genuine arguments. Now, because I'm not living in the hate rabbit hole online and I can still see things mostly objectively, let me take a moment to speak for all the Bruce Banners who cannot represent themselves well because they hulk out every time they try to express their feelings. It is no secret that a lot of people are resistant to change, and more so men. I could go into a whole rabbit hole of the psychology of marriage where women typically change their names and move to new families and adopt new identities and go from Miss to Mrs. afterwards, and how every stage of a woman's life is marked by physiological changes, versus men who have the same hobbies from 8 to 80, go by Mr. all their lives, keep their names, and only gain maturity, a deeper voice, and muscle mass through the two distinct stages of their lives. But suffice it to say, women are more welcoming and adaptable to change, while men like what they like to remain the way they like it. To a larger extent, because there are definitely outliers, but we're not speaking about those. If we had a Venn diagram of gamers who are currently complaining about the influx of female protagonists replacing men in established franchises, and crossed those over with the number of gamers who loved Metroid, Tomb Raider, and Horizon Zero Dawn, based on the backlash that came from the changes to Lara Croft and Aloy's appearances, I'm pretty sure you'll find substantial crossover. What that sentence means is, the men complaining about franchises historically led by a male protagonist switching to a female protagonist are the same men who love Tomb Raider, Metroid, and Horizon Zero Dawn. If you cater to the larger male audience, it's good practice to be transparent from the beginning. If most male gamers know that they're buying into a female protagonist from the beginning, they'll only complain when they feel like she's turning into Nikocado Avocado before their eyes. They have already bought into the game with your female protagonist, so the only thing that will anger them is unnecessary or unexplained change. And taking that same train of thought, if they've bought into a franchise for a male protagonist and brought all their masculine energy and enthusiasm to the property, turning the franchise into a female-led game will create feelings of resentment and or manipulation, especially if it's a female that they have to be introduced to afresh and try and invest new energy into. If you don't believe me, go and look at what everyone was saying about Red Dead Redemption 2 when they realized that they were not going to be playing as John Marston again. Or Metal Gear Solid when Raiden was first introduced. But bigger than all that, you would be surprised that a lot of people will not even get into those arguments online, and they'll just quietly move on from your franchise. Which is a thing that Hollywood came to understand. You may want to fight a war with the quote-unquote toxic, misogynistic, amplified voices online, but you quickly realize that your real problem is actually the millions of people who silently walked away from your franchise. As any marriage counselor will tell you, when your partner cannot even be bothered to fight with you anymore, it's over. And again, back to Miles Morales, because every time I make one of these videos, he has to come up. I had this conversation with someone who was pushing back against my criticisms of the Insomniac Spider-Man game direction, and he pointed out the success of the Spider-Verse movies as a rebuttal. To which I responded, the Spider-Verse movies advertised Miles front and center, so you are a willing participant from the beginning. The Insomniac Spider-Man games sold you Peter Parker from the beginning. Then once you were hooked, they deceptively switched the lead to Miles. I already shared a clip of Brian Intihar explaining his deceptive approach to making games with the hook at first of what he knows you want, then the subtle manipulation to get you to like what he wants you to like.
Give people stuff you know they want, So you can inject things that maybe they aren't familiar with or maybe they don't know they want, but make them like that stuff.
If we don't encourage couples to lie to each other during the dating stage, because you cannot build your relationship with your queen on a throne of lies, we should not encourage entertainment companies to bait and switch their audiences. You will get short-term gains, if any at all, but the larger audience that did not buy into it will always see you as untrustworthy. And I'm not even pulling out any accusations of agendas or conspiracies to feminize male gamers from the Ghost of Yotei makers, even though it's a Sony game, but I'm just saying. If you cultivate a large male player base, which is the dominant player base in gaming, regardless of what they'll try to tell you, you risk alienating a good percentage of them when you make such changes. I already made a whole video talking about how the gaming industry was following Hollywood and it would lead them to ruin, and almost a year later, things have not changed. And if your goal is to manipulate people and run some sort of social experiment, freedom to choose exists in the open market, so no one is obligated to buy any game. Capitalism is not the environment for you to try and engineer social change through a commercial leisure product. The only environment that supports such decisions is the road to bankruptcy. In art and storybook land, which is where I have a bit of expertise, it is common knowledge that when you're writing for kids, boys will gravitate to read books with boys and cars and mechanical items in them, and girls will read books with anything. And that trend carries over, and you can see it represented in every form of media. There are absolutely no calls from men to try and encourage women to watch sports and go out to support big male-led action movies, or even support the video game industry. And conversely, there are also no men crying for representation in the fashion or cosmetic or any other billion-dollar industry that is propped up by women, because majority of the time men will be interested in men's stuff, but women will be interested in women's stuff and men's stuff. People who want their children's books to sell will create and market their books appropriately, so while calling people incels for resisting certain changes, it is good to have context behind some of the motivations that influence people's general preferences. Make all your male-led games and make all your female-led games, but try not to amass an audience through trickery. Put your cards on the table from the jump, and let the audience make an informed decision about where they're investing their energy. As much as this new society wants to pretend there's no difference between us, there are a lot of differences. But I'm basically yelling into the void at this point because this video will dissuade no one. And odds are it has even annoyed someone who thinks facts are harmful. But ultimately I made this video for myself so I could just get this out of my system. The war is already raging online and half of you on either side do not want to listen to reason, so have fun with that. I'll see you in the next one, which will be way more fun. Peace.
So cool, but why am I here?
Burning the games industry to the ground. It's literally the third bullet point right there. You can read it on the screen. We want cooler stories, a safer world, burning the games industry to the ground.